How illusory it is, the observer decodes it. This is a mainstream media story. Your entire life, because more and more stories are coming out, even from some areas of mainstream science now that are saying this, your entire life is an illusion. New test backs up theory that the world doesn't exist until we look at it. There's another word I'll use instead of look at it in a second. Quantum mechanics states reality doesn't exist until it's measured. I would say this reality does not exist until it's decoded. And the process of focus, the process of what they call looking, activates that process of decoding. Just like the falling tree makes no noise, this reality, when it's not being decoded, is a waveform information construct. Your mind can control matter, says physicist. Atomic particles were shown to be also waves, which so many scientists were bamboozled by. How can something be a particle and a wave? Well, because it's a wave, and then it is decoded by the act of observation, focus, and becomes a particle. But they're just two aspects of the same information. Whether they manifested as waves or as particles, this story says, depending on whether someone was looking, decoding. Observation influenced physical reality of the particles. In more technical language, observation collapsed the wave function. Decoding collapses the wave function into the holographic world that we think is outside of us. They call it the observer effect in science. I would call it the decoder effect. Now, this is a Nobel physicist, John Wheeler. No phenomenon is a real phenomenon until it is an observed phenomenon, a decoded phenomenon. Until then, it's a waveform information field. And the crazy thing, too, is that all this is going on in a narrow band of frequency, so tiny, it's laughable. The amount of infinite reality, i.e. infinite consciousness, that we can perceive is ridiculous to the point of insanity. According to mainstream science, the electromagnetic field, what we call light, is 0.005% of what exists in the universe. Some say it's a bit more, but not much. And all the rest, the scientists talk about dark energy and dark matter. I don't actually buy that explanation in the detail that they present it, but it's safe to say that all but a tiny fraction of reality, this universe included, is not seen by us. And even more hilarious is that within the 0.005%, all we can see of that is that sliver we call, or scientists call, visible light. That is the only world that we can perceive through the five senses. And if we stay in those five senses and perceive only that, we get our perceptions from that, brackets, deeply limited, our perception of self-identity from that, brackets, deeply limited, and we end up in a frequency box of perception while infinity lies beyond it. And so, because we can see such a narrow band of frequency, again, when people say, look, I saw this UFO, it just appeared out of nowhere, and then it disappeared out of nowhere into nowhere. Or somebody says, oh, this entity appeared in front of me, and out of nowhere, I didn't come here, this was just there. And then it disappeared. 5 cents, press enter, because that's what it is. Information, press enter, get the reaction, the program reaction. That's ridiculous. You can't just appear and disappear. Well, if you appear or enter the frequency band that people are decoding into what we call the visual world, then they will not be decoding you, They enter, now suddenly they're decoding you. To the observer, they've come out of bloody nowhere. They haven't at all. They've entered the frequency band that we can see. Same when they leave. Same thing. Again, these things are simply explainable, but only with any kind of basic understanding of reality. And that's why this system does not want us to understand this. They want us to think this is all physical, this is all real, it's all outside of us, because then we will waft our hands away constantly saying, not possible, that can't happen, that's ridiculous. Why are we enslaved by illusion? Because there's nothing wrong with illusions, decoded illusions. Illusions only control us when we think they're real and believe they're real. When we know they're illusions and we're decoding them, we can play with them, we can have fun with them. The reason that these illusions are enslaving us is because they're meant to. I can't go into this now because I want to stay on this subject today. But there is a web of human control that ultimately goes into the realms beyond this realm of human sight, into the unseen realms, and has a non-human origin, a non-human spider at the center of the web, if you like, and then comes into our reality in the form of bloodline families, secret societies, and so on, which are dictating events in the world of the seen. And the whole foundation of this control is control of perception for all the reasons that I'm talking about. Who creates our reality? We do, but we do in the sense that our brain decodes, interprets reality. But it interprets reality on the basis of information received. Thus, whoever controls the information received, if it's not filtered by an awakened conscious mind, dictates the perceptions on which the brain decodes and structures and constructs this controlled hallucination. And if you can hijack what information people receive, you hijack their perceptions, you hijack the way they decode reality, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And of course, until relatively recently, scientists thought, because what you get with scientists, what we know is, and what you mean, mate, is what you think you know is now, and you'll know something else later. What we know is, they said, once the brain is formed, then that's how it is. Now they realize that's not only nonsense, the opposite is the case. Because of something called brain placidity, where the brain changes, rewires itself on the basis of what? Information received. This is why all this smart technology in all its forms is changing the human brain, because it's a vastly different information source to what was there before. And therefore, if you through your life are continually receiving the same information, the same perception of reality, your brain will rewire and reroute itself to constantly create that self-fulfilling prophecy. Got your perceptions, got you. And this is why human life, when you look at it from outside of the illusion, is one big program to impose a perception which imposes an experienced reality. Because what it is a narrow band of possibility. And what do you need to interact in an expanded way with the fields of possibility and potentialities? You need an expanded sense of the possible. What this postage stamp consensus is a squeezing of the possible. And from cradle to grave, that's basically all the information that people ever hear or see. And thus it becomes their normal. Everybody knows that, mate. And the postage stamp consensus can be also described as unquestioned belief. We receive this information from cradle to grave, from parents, and from the education system and the media and all this and peer pressure. And if we don't question it, that unquestioned belief, perception coagulates, solidifies into a lifelong perception of possibility. And another part of this postage stamp consensus hoax is familiarity, which also is an expression of unquestioned belief. When something becomes familiar, it is no longer questioned. It becomes a gimme. It becomes an everyone knows that. It becomes this is the real world, mate.